If you are just starting with Google Analytics, this video is exactly what you need. I will show you how to get started with GA4, I will show you the interface, the reports, and how to launch your first setup. Google Analytics is still under a very heavy development and it changes constantly. So if you see major changes between this video and what you see in the interface, then take a look at the description of this video. There might be a newer version of this tutorial available. In this tutorial, I will show you not only the overview of the platform, but I will also share a lot of tips along the way. So stay tuned and let's dive in. To get started, go to analytics.google.com. If you have never worked with Google Analytics before, then you will see a view like this asking you to create an account. And if you have already worked in the past with GA4, which means that you have at least one account, then you will be automatically connected to that account. In this tutorial, we will create a new account. Therefore, you can either start filling in this form or you can go to Admin, then click Create Account. Account in this case is the organization, and that organization might own multiple websites. So for those websites, you can create one property or you can create separate properties for each website. That depends on the situation. So first, let's add a name for the account. I will call this Analytics Mania Demo. And then here you will need to select your data sharing settings. You can read through these and decide which ones are needed for you. For example, if you plan to use benchmarking, which is a feature that allows you to compare your business performance against other businesses, although personally I'm not a fan of that, but if you plan to use that, then this checkbox should be enabled. Anyway, right now I will keep this as it is and then click Next. Then we have to create a property. A property is like a bucket where your data will be stored. If you have multiple websites, but they are part of the same user journey, then you can create one property for all those websites. Or if you have multiple websites that are kind of separated and they are related to separate products, maybe separate business lines, then you would need to create separate properties for each website. Then here I will, let's say, call this Analytics Mania website or something like that. Then select the reporting time zone. I will select, let's say, Lithuania. But ideally, you should select the reporting time zone here depending on what is your main backend system. For example, if you often compare your sales against Stripe and Stripe's reporting zone is US, then I would recommend selecting US as a time zone right here as well. Then I will select the currency. In my case, it will be euros and click Next. Then provide additional business details. For example, you can select your industry category and then your business size, then click Next. And here you should select your business objectives. These choices right here will define what kind of reports will you see in your GA4 property. Personally, I will select the other, which will contain a similar collection of reports. It will be just organized in a bit different way. So I will select this and click Create. Then let's agree to terms of service. And then we will need to configure data stream. To understand what data stream is and what is the purpose of it, let's take a look at one diagram. Everything starts with a Google account. This is your account that you use to access various Google's products like Gmail, Google Ads, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and so on. Then, when it comes to Google Analytics, each company, as I've said, would have a separate Google Analytics account. Inside an account, you might have one property or you might have multiple properties. Some properties might contain only website data, others might have the combination of those, or some properties might be just for mobile app tracking. And then inside the properties, you have data streams. So data streams are like the destinations to which you send data, and then properties get the data from the data stream. In Google Analytics, there are three types of data streams: website, Android, and then iOS. You don't have to own the mobile app to use Google Analytics. If you want to track just the website, then this is completely fine. It will be enough for you just to have the website data stream. In this tutorial, we will be working with websites, and that's why the main focus will be on website data streams. If this was a regular project, then I would select the data stream and then I would create it. But right now, let's take a quick step back, and before we create this, first I want to give you a quick overview of what kind of admin settings are available in Google Analytics. So I will skip this for now. Then click Continue to Home, and then let's go to the Admin panel. At the bottom left corner, click Admin, and here you will see a bunch of different settings. In the admin panel, we have a lot of settings. Some of them are related to account, and then most of them are related to this particular property. I will not be diving too deep into each setting individually because that would make this tutorial much longer, and I want to fit into 1 hour. So I will just mention the most important ones, or I will just briefly mention what that setting is responsible for. So in the account section, you can manage certain account details, like you can change those settings that you picked at the beginning of the account creation. Then if you want, you can also delete the account or rename it, or maybe change the country of business. Then in the account access management, you can manage who has access to this particular account and what can they do. For example, if I click here and then go to a user, I can see that this is an administrator, but I can add more users and limit them, for example, just to a person who views the report. And if I want, I could even hide the cost and revenue metrics from them. Then if you want to see what was changed recently because maybe at some point your property or your account stopped working, then you can take a look at account change history, and also you can look at the property change history where you will see a list of what kind of changes were made. If you delete a property, you can go to trash and then restore that property. But of course, right now I don't have that. Then if I go back to the list of all settings, we will take a look at the property settings. So if you want to rename the property or change the currency or time zone, then you can do that in the property details. Then in the reports section, you can schedule certain reports and they will be delivered via email. So the scheduled emails section will show you all scheduled reports and their settings. Then we have the data collection and modification. Here we will work with data streams. Soon I will show you what that means. Then in the data collection, click here, you will see several options that you can enable. For example, if you want to collect additional demographic data about your visitors, for example, their gender or their age, of course, that data is not super accurate, but it might be still useful, then you might want to enable Google Signals. You could do that by clicking the Turn On button right here. Then there's also user-provided data collection. Right now, when I'm recording this video, it is in beta, and there are some issues or nuances with this. So for now, I would not recommend turning this on. And if you want to work with Google Ads conversion tracking, then I would recommend using the native tracking codes of Google Ads rather than sending user data to GA4 and then exporting that data from GA4 to Google Ads. Then you can also import some data, for example, from the CSV file, and you can include some ad cost data, maybe additional item data, and so on. Then there is one setting which is very important, and you should modify it as soon as you create a new property. So go to data retention, and here change from 2 months to 14 months. Because if you don't do that, the Explore section will let you work only with the data of the last 2 months. And if you have data, let's say, collected for at least 12 months, you will be limited just to 2 months, unless you change this as soon as you create the property. Then there are data filters. There are not many of them, but one of the main things that you can do with data filters right now is to exclude your internal traffic, which means that your own employees, your colleagues will not be tracked by Google Analytics, or actually their interactions will not pollute your data in Google Analytics 4. I will not be showing how to do that, but if you want to learn more how to use this, I will post a link to a tutorial below the video. And then if some data is incorrect and you want to delete it, you can use data deletion requests. You can learn more about them by clicking the button here, and then there are several links that will lead you to a documentation. Even though there are some limitations, it still might be useful in some situations. Then there is a data display section that contains a lot of settings. So if you have tracked some events with Google Analytics property, then you will see that list right here. You can also modify those incoming events by using this feature, or you can create new events based on those incoming events. If you want to learn how to use these features, I will post a link to a tutorial below the video. Some events might be more important for you than the others. For example, a purchase is more important than a scroll event, or a form submission is more important. So if some events are of greater importance for you, you can mark them as key events. Previously, key events were called conversions, and you can manage them right here. And if you want a particular event to be marked as a key event, you can click here and then enter that event's name. For example, form submission, if you already are tracking that. You could also mark events as key events in the list of events. Right now, I don't have any data, but if there was a list, there would be a button that I could just click and mark that event as a key event. Here is an example of another demo property that I have. And here, if I wanted to mark an event as a key event, I could just simply toggle this button right here. Also, I forgot to mention that Google Analytics changes often and new updates are added very frequently. So there is a chance that when you're watching this tutorial, some things look different. Maybe they have been renamed, or maybe they have been moved somewhere else. So you might need to adapt in certain situations. Then we have audiences. So audiences basically have two purposes. So the first one is that you could use them as one of the ways to segment your data and, for example, look at what particular group of visitors are doing on your website. And another purpose, which is probably the main one, is that you could export these audiences to Google Ads and then show ads to those particular people. Then other ways how you can slice your data and, for example, look just at the subset of it is with comparisons in standard reports and segments. I will mention this very briefly soon, but right now what you need to remember is that you can save them so that other people working in this property could also use them. So when you save comparisons or segments, they will be available right here. And it means that this list is available to other people and other users who have access to this property. Then we have custom definitions. Custom definitions are used to register three things: custom dimensions, custom metrics, and calculated metrics. If you're sending some custom data to Google Analytics, it might not be visible in the reports out of the box. In that case, you would need to register either custom dimensions, custom metrics, or if you want to do some additional, more custom calculation, calculated metrics would be needed. In my another demo property, here are several examples. For example, if I want to see the sales based on course ID, there is no default dimension in Google Analytics, or you can call this like an attribute, which is called course ID. So I created this and I'm sending course ID as a custom parameter to Google Analytics. And then later I can see what kind of course IDs bring me the most revenue, or something like that. Then speaking of custom metrics, if I want to track how many times my pop-ups were displayed, I could send a pop-up displayed metric. And if I want to calculate the pop-up submission rate, I could create a calculated metric where I divide pop-up submissions by pop-up impressions. I understand that these topics are a bit too complicated at this moment, but I just wanted to mention that these are possible in Google Analytics 4. Then we have channel groups, and Google Analytics is capable of grouping different traffic sources into larger buckets. For example, traffic from different search engines could be put into a single group, which is called organic. And here are currently available default channels. We have paid shopping, paid search, display, which is like banner advertising, then email, audio, SMS, and so on. But if you have some traffic source, let's say ebooks, that are not covered by these channels, you can then create a new channel group that will also include some custom channels. So this is useful if you want to customize and tailor Google Analytics more to your needs. Then we have attribution settings. So without overwhelming you too much, I would say that if you're just starting, you can keep these settings as they are. The only thing that you might need to change this right now is to link your Google Ads account, because then you will unlock certain features in Google Analytics, for example, advertising reports. And in general, that would be useful if you are running Google Ads already. Then there is reporting identity. So this section is responsible for how Google Analytics will count your visitors. Will it only use cookies to identify the visitors, or will it also try to use user ID, or maybe it will try even to use some machine learning features? In total, there are 3 identities. We see 2 by default, but there is also a third one. The cool thing about this is that you can change this at any point in time. This does not affect the data that is stored in your property. It affects how the data is calculated, but the calculations are retroactive, which means that you can change this and then your historical data will be displayed slightly different. And if you don't like that, you can revert back to the original settings and it will be just fine. Then we will use the debug view. This is very handy if you are implementing Google Analytics because we will be able to troubleshoot and verify our setup and see if the data is actually being tracked. And then finally, we have a bunch of integrations with other Google's tools. The most popular ones are Google Ads, then BigQuery, and then Search Console. For example, you can connect Google Search Console and then Google Analytics will get some data about your Google organic search and you will be able to see that in GA4. All right, now that we are more familiar with the admin panel, let's go back to the data streams. In admin panel, go to data collection and then data streams. We are going to create a web data stream. So click here. And then here you will need to enter the URL of the website and the name for the stream. In my case, I will be working on a sandbox website, and here you can enter any name, for example, website. To be honest, the URL that you enter here does not matter that much. What I mean is that you can use the same data stream for multiple websites. So if you have this stream and you want to install it on 3 websites, it does not matter which website's URL you will enter here. It can be website A, B, or C, and it will still work. So once you enter the website URL and name the stream, then click Create and Continue. This will prompt you to set up a Google tag, which is a fancy name for the tracking code that Google wants you to install. And there are various ways how you can install Google Analytics. You can either ask the developer to add this tracking code to the source code of the website, ideally somewhere in the head. Another option is Google Tag Manager, and this is what we will be using in this tutorial because that's my preferred way of managing tracking codes. Also, it is possible that maybe you're working with some content management system or some e-commerce platform that has a built-in Google Analytics integration. And all they ask you to do is just to enter measurement ID. So measurement ID is this ID right here that starts with G. You would then need to add this into that particular field, save the changes, and then Google Analytics would be installed on your website. Soon I will show you how to install GA4, but right now let's close this. And here we have a bunch of settings related to the web data stream. We have the measurement ID, which is the same as it was in that previously shown code. We will be using this. Then there is enhanced measurement. So enhanced measurement is a set of features that let Google Analytics automatically track certain events on a website. If you click this icon right here, you will see what kind of interactions can be tracked. GA4 can track when a visitor scrolls below the 90% of the page height, which means that the visitor almost reaches the bottom of the page. Then if a visitor clicks a link that redirects him or her to another website, which is not part of your website, it will track an outbound click. Then if your website has a search feature, then Google Analytics in most cases will be able to track that automatically and you will see what kind of keywords are people using. Then there are form interactions, but from my experience, this is not very accurate. There are many false positives. That's why I personally keep this disabled. Then there are video engagement events, but this applies only to embedded YouTube videos. So if you have them, you can keep this enabled. And if you have some links that people can click and download or open files, for example, PDF or Word documents, then this will track those clicks. So now let's click Save and look at other settings. I will not be explaining everything because, again, that would take a lot of time. I will just mention the most important things. Modify events and create custom events features are the same as they are in the events section right here. So both of these do the same thing as the section in the data stream settings right here. Then if your developers want to send data from their server to Google Analytics, they would need to use measurement protocol. So to send that kind of data, they would need to use API secrets. If you want to learn more about this feature, then you can click this link. Then, if your page URLs contain some sensitive information, such as email address, which goes against the terms of service of Google, then you can use the redact data feature. So by default, Google Analytics will try to do its best to remove the email addresses from things like link URLs or page URLs. I mean, the actual page URL will remain the same, but the data collected by GA4 will try to redact it. And instead of, let's say, an email address, you will see redacted like this. And if you want, you can exclude even more parameters if you have, let's say, first name, last name, and you can do that by clicking here and entering those parameters. If you want to learn more about data redaction, I will post a link to a tutorial below the video. Now let's discard the changes and go further. Here we have configure tag settings. Click here and you will see a bunch of additional options. Let's take a look at some of them. If I click show more, here you will see configure your domains. So if you install this Google Analytics property on two websites that are part of the same journey, then here you should definitely click and then add those two domains. For example, website1.com and then website2.com and then save it. This will tell Google Analytics that both websites are part of the same journey and that Google Analytics should try to track those visitors on both websites as the same visitor. If you want to learn more about cross-domain tracking, then I will post a link to a tutorial below the video. Now let's close this. Then another option that is worth mentioning is the define internal traffic. This is related to the data filters that I mentioned before. So if you want to learn more about how to exclude your own internal traffic, then there is a tutorial below the video. Then another useful feature that you should consider is related to situations where, for example, you have a website and people can buy on that website. During the checkout process, they can leave your website, go to some payment gateway like paypal.com, and then they go back to your site to complete the purchase and, for example, see the order confirmation page. So if a visitor lands on your website from paypal.com, because that's where the visitor was supposed to go to complete the payment, some sessions and some purchases might be attributed to paypal.com, even though the sale should be attributed to the original traffic source of the session. So if you want to exclude some unwanted referrals, you should use this section and then enter, for example, stripe.com if you are using Stripe, or paypal.com, or maybe something else. If you don't know yet what are the unwanted referrals in your case, you could collect the data for a week or two, and then if you see some unwanted referrals in your reports, then you can add them right here and click save. And then the final setting that I wanted to mention here is the adjust session timeout. So by default, session ends if the user has not been active on your website for 30 minutes. However, personally, when I think about how I browse the website, I might keep that tab open for a couple of hours and then I come back. So personally, I think that it would still be the same session. That's why I increase the session duration from 30 minutes to at least 4 hours, but most often I just select the maximum, which is 7 hours and 55 minutes. If you don't agree, you have full right to do so, but that's just how I treat the session timeout. Also, there's a timer for engaged sessions. If someone stays on your page for 10 seconds, then Google Analytics will think that this is an engaged user. Personally, I think that 10 seconds are way too short, so I usually select 60 seconds and then click save. Another thing which might be useful for you is the history. If at some point Google Analytics stops working for you, one of the places where I check is the history, because maybe someone did some changes to the Google tag that broke your setup. So always keep an eye on this section right here. All right, so I think that's enough of the theory. Now let's take a look at how to install Google Analytics and how to start collecting data with it. To install Google Analytics, go to Admin, then Data Streams, and click your website data stream. If you plan to use Google Tag Manager, then this will be enough. If your website's platform, which I mean is content management system, if it has some built-in Google Analytics integration and it is asking for measurement ID, then this is also enough. Just copy it and then paste it to that particular field in your content management system, save it, and Google Analytics will be installed. But if you are working on a custom website and there are no plugins, there are no integrations, Google Tag Manager is not an option, then you would need to go to View Tag Instructions, install manually, and add this code to the head of the website or give this code to a developer. What's important is that this code must be installed on all pages of the website. Speaking of adding this Google tag to the website code, an example would look like this. If you have access, you can just copy it and then add it to the head like this, for example. And once you save the changes, Google Analytics will be installed on your website. But as I've said in this tutorial, I will be using Google Tag Manager because that's the recommended way of how to install GA4 in my opinion. So the first step, if you haven't worked with Google Tag Manager before, would be to create an account in Google Tag Manager. You can do that by going to tagmanager.google.com, then either create a new account or you will be asked to create a new account, and here enter your company name. I will just enter, let's say, Analytics Mania Demo, then select your country, and then the container. So the container is the place where you will be storing your tracking codes. And it includes Google Tag, but also if you want to track additional events, each event might require a separate Google Tag Manager tag. Because in the context of Google Tag Manager, a tag is a piece of code that does something, which usually means tracking. So here in the container name, I will enter, I don't know, gtmplayground.com, because that's the website where I will install this. And then select Web. Click Create. Then agree with terms of service, click yes. And this is the code that you or your developer will have to install to the website. Once this is done, then you will be able to manage your other tracking codes inside Google Tag Manager. The second code is optional, and I would say that you can easily ignore this. Now let's copy the first code, and if you have access to the website code, then the Google Tag Manager code's location would look like this. You have a head, this is the beginning of the head, this is the end, and then Google Tag Manager container is right here. So save the changes. Just like it was with Google Analytics, there might be some plugins available for your content management system. So you could investigate and, for example, enter how to install Google Tag Manager on X, and that X could be the name of your platform. And maybe you will find another way how to install it if you don't want to add the code directly right here. So once Google Tag Manager is installed, then you can test if this is working. So click Preview, and then enter the URL of the website and then click Connect. If you see connected right here, it means that the installation was done properly. Also, when working with Google Tag Manager, I would recommend installing this Chrome extension because it will improve this preview mode of Google Tag Manager. I will post a link to it below the video. Now let's install Google Analytics with Google Tag Manager. Go to Tags, then New, Tag Configuration, Google Analytics, and then Google Tag. Here we have to paste the measurement ID, and we already got that in the settings of WebStream. So copy this, paste it here, and then set this tag to fire on initialization all pages. So this means that on all pages where Google Tag Manager container is installed, this Google Analytics tracking code will also be activated. Then let's name this, let's say GA4 config, and hit save. Now let's click preview to test if this is working. And if you click on initialization, you will see that your tag fired. Ignore this unknown tag type. There is a bug in the preview mode. If you closed both of these tags, waited for a couple of minutes, and then tried to enable the preview mode again, this would disappear. So anyway, this works fine. Your tag fired successfully. Now let's go to Google Analytics and test if this is actually working and the data was received. I will close the WebStream settings And then in the admin, I will go to debug view. Since I created this property very recently, the debug view is quite slow and it might take a bit more time to wait until you start seeing the data. Now, I'm not sure how long will you need to wait. Sometimes it might be a couple of minutes, sometimes it might be more. So just browsing the website maybe will help, I don't know. So let's go here, maybe here, maybe here. I will also refresh the page. Then I could go to the debug view, maybe refresh here will help. So now I will pause the video and we'll come back when this starts to work. And here we go. I waited like a minute or so and now I start to see some events. For example, page view. I can click it and I see what kind of information was tracked, including page title, page location, which is the URL. And eventually I should see more events here. But again, what I've noticed is that when you create a new property, the debug view is slower than usual. So if this was a real project, I would then have to go to Google Tag Manager and publish these changes, because right now I'm previewing this only in my browser. So other website visitors, they are still not getting Google Analytics tracking code. So to make this public, click Submit, then enter a version name, for example, installed GA4, and then publish. From this moment, the tracking code, which is Google Tag, it is live and active for all website visitors. And eventually I should start seeing data in the real-time reports. So I could go to reports, then real-time overview, and I should see more visitors here. Of course, I'm working on a demo website, so there's only one visitor. But if this was a live website, more data from other visitors would start to come in. Now let's look at the reports. Since you have installed Google Analytics very recently, the data will not be there yet. It usually takes at least 24 hours, but usually even 48 hours for the data to be properly displayed in the reports. So instead, we will look at the reports in the demo account so that you can get a better idea of certain reports. First, we will look at the reports section right here. Later, we will look at the Explore. I often refer to this section as the standard reports because when you create a GA4 property, you get a set of standard reports. The sidebar right here can be customized, or it also depends on which checkboxes did you click when you were creating the property. In my case, this is what I have. The acquisition reports are related to traffic sources, or in other words, where the visitors are coming from. In this section, I usually look at the traffic acquisition. If you have different collections of reports, just expand all of them and see which one is talking about the traffic acquisition. So let's go here and see what we have. This report will show us the top traffic sources where the visitors are coming from and what they do. The default dimension is channel group, which means that multiple traffic sources, if they belong to the same category, they will be included in the same bucket. For example, all organic traffic from search engines will be included in the organic search. Organic in this case means that the visitors organically visited the search engine, entered a keyword, and then landed on this page. No paid ads were involved in this user journey. The first column in this table is called a dimension, which describes, let's say, the traffic source, or in other report, it might describe the product, like product name, product ID, and then all other columns show metrics. There is a horizontal scroll bar, so if you want, you could zoom out your browser a bit to see all numbers at once. Speaking of metrics, they will differ depending on what kind of report you are looking at. For example, we have sessions. You can think of a session as a visit. So when a visitor visits your site and does something for a while, all those events during the same visit are included in one session. If a visitor spends a bit more time or maybe views multiple pages or converts, then that session is treated as engaged session. Then we also have the event count metric. We can see how many events did we get from each traffic source. An event means an interaction or a page view. Basically, any action that the visitor does on your site, that is an event. It can be form submission, scroll, purchase, or whatever else you're tracking in your property. If you want to take a look at particular events, you can click this drop down right here and then select that particular event. For example, I want to see how many add to carts did I get. So I click here and I get most of the add to carts from direct. Now, direct is a bit misleading, even though sometimes people can actually directly go to your website, but sometimes Google Analytics just does not know where the visitor came from. In that case, that session will still be attributed to the direct channel. If you want, you can change the primary dimension. For example, it's popular to select session source medium to get more details. For example, Google organic means that someone searched for your business or maybe your product and landed on the website. Google CPC means paid Google ads because CPC stands for cost per click. Then we have session key event rate. It shows what is the percentage out of all sessions that ended in a conversion, which is also known as a key event. For example, if you want to know what is the percentage of sessions that ended with a purchase, you can select the event here, and then you will see the key event rate, which is also known as conversion rate in the old days of Google Analytics. And you also have revenue, but this data will be available, including the purchase event, only if you have actually configured the purchase tracking. And that process differs depending on what kind of website or platform you're using. Then here we have the date range, so you can select different date ranges. You can change the granularity. For example, you can see by week the numbers right here. By default, the chart shows the top 5 results from the table, and this dotted line shows the total traffic or total volume of that particular dimension. If you want, you can look just at one particular traffic source, so uncheck them. If you want, you can uncheck the total and then click plot rows. And now you see the data only of that particular traffic source. You can even, again, change the granularity to day, and here's what you got. You can also search for a particular traffic source, but this is looking only for partial matches, so it means contains. If you want to use something more advanced, like regular expressions, you cannot do that. But if you want, you can add more filters. For example, I can look at the traffic only from United States. I can do that by adding a filter and then selecting country, and then let's say exactly matches United States, and then apply. So now I'm looking only at the traffic which is coming from United States. You can also compare different groups or different subsets of data. For example, let's remove this filter, and instead I will use comparisons. Click Edit Comparisons, then click Create New, and let's compare US traffic against Canada traffic. So country exactly matches United States. This is one comparison, and I will click apply. And then I can add another comparison where the country exactly matches Canada, and then apply that. Now I can hide all users, so I can just remove it. And then I can see in a chart how many sessions did I get from each traffic source. The reason why we see sessions right here is because if we scroll down and move to the left, is because I am sorting by sessions. But if I sort by revenue, so I can click here, the chart will also be updated. You can also see your top pages, so keep looking for a report that mentions pages and screens. And then the report goes back to all users, but if you click this, then you will switch back to the comparisons. And here you will see the top pages, how many views did they get. A view in this case means a page view, then how many users saw that page, and so on. Then there is also a landing page report. Landing page is the first page of the session. So here you can see where people are landing on your website. There are many reasons why you might see the not set right here, and if you want to learn more, I will post a link to it below the video. But when it comes to landing page, one of the most common reasons is that the session duration is very short. If you increase the session duration from 30 minutes to, let's say, 5 hours, then the scale of this number would be much lower. If you have implemented e-commerce tracking, which means that you're tracking purchases, then you can also see the data in reports such as e-commerce purchases, where you can see which items were purchased how many of them were purchased. If you're tracking when someone adds products to carts, then you will see some metrics right here as well. So this is like a general overview of the interface. Of course, I could explain much more, but we are limited by the time a bit. If you want to learn much more about reports, how to navigate, how to use them, then take a look at my GA4 course, and I will post a link to it below the video. Maybe one more thing that I could mention is the real-time overview. So here you can see some data about the visitors of your website in the last 30 minutes, and you can also see how many users did you have in the last 5 minutes. If you want to see which pages are currently viewed by your visitors, you can also look at the real-time pages report right here. And previously it was working, but right now I'm not sure why this is happening. Maybe a bug in Google Analytics 4. All right, okay, so I refreshed and this is working. So these are the pages currently viewed by people on the site. But just keep in mind that these metrics are related to the last 30 minutes. The other place where you will be spending some time in Google Analytics is called Explore, or in other words, explorations. This is a bit more advanced compared to the reports section, but it's definitely worth spending time to learn how to work with this. And there are different exploration methods. We have freeform, which is a table, but it kind of contains some additional visualization methods, but I primarily use it to build tables. Then funnel exploration, path exploration. Then we have segment overlap, cohort analysis, and user lifetime. But personally, I use the first three the most often. Let's start with a blank exploration, which will default to the freeform, because the technique here is freeform. So the interface of the explorations is split into 3 parts: the variables, then settings, and then the output of the report. Here you can build segments if you want to look just at the subset of data, then dimensions and metrics. So here you include everything that you plan to use in the report. The content of the settings column depends on what kind of technique are you using. For example, funnel exploration will have different settings compared to the freeform. Let's build a sample report, which will be fairly basic, but it should give you an idea of how to work with this. Let's say that we want to see how our sales perform, but we want to look at it from the perspective of countries or device categories. To do that, first I will add dimensions. So I click plus, and then I will be working with device category. So this is the search field, and then I select it. Then I will include country, then select it here. And for now, I think this will be enough. So click confirm. And then in the metrics, I will be looking at revenue. And there's a metric for that called purchase revenue. Then click confirm. Now I will include the country in rows. You can either drag it, but if dragging doesn't work reliably, you can then just double click the dimension and it will be added to the report. Then I want to look at devices as columns. So I will add this right here. And finally, I will double click on the metric and it will be added to the metrics section right here. And now I see the top countries and different combinations of device categories. So I see that this business gets most of its traffic from United States, and those visitors are browsing with a desktop. By the way, we can change the visualization a bit. If you want, you can switch from bar chart cell type to heat map. Or if you want just plain table, then you can switch to plain text. There are many other options, but I don't want to make this video too long, so feel free to investigate this once you have collected some data. Now let's look at another thing. This particular property is related to an e-commerce website that has a site search feature. So people can enter keywords on that website and then they will get the results. So let's see what kind of keywords are the most popular among website visitors. We can just click here to add a new tab, and again, we will be working with the freeform. And then we want to include certain dimensions. I will click plus here, and first will be search term, because this is tracked automatically by enhanced measurement. Then we will need to filter down just to particular events, and we can do that with the event name dimension. So select this. And for now, this will be enough. So click confirm. As for metrics, I will include 2 metrics. The first one is event count, because I want to see how many times each keyword was entered, and then total users. Let's click checkbox and confirm. So now I will include search term, so I can just double click it and it will be added to rows. And then I will double click on event count and total users. Now I see what kind of keywords are searched by the website visitors. But I have this empty row with a very large event count. This is happening because right now this report includes all events, not only related to the site search. Let's add a filter. So click here, then event name, and we will be looking only at the data of those events where event name exactly matches, and then you can type view underscore and you will find view search results. This is the event tracked by enhanced measurement. Now click apply, and here we have the top keywords. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that Google Analytics is case sensitive. So YouTube with the uppercase T and lowercase t are considered as different values. But the same problem was also available in the previous version of Google Analytics. So to fix that, you would need to implement probably some custom site search tracking where all keywords are lowercased. If you want to learn more about freeform exploration, then I will post a link to a tutorial below the video. Now let's take a look at another exploration method that I often use, which is funnel exploration. Here you can define certain steps that you want your visitors to complete in that particular order, and then you can see how people are dropping off between the steps. Let me create a basic example where I will be looking at visitors who viewed any product, then added any product to a cart, and then made a purchase. To do that, in the steps, click the pencil, and here I will add the configuration for each step. The funnel that I described is possible only if you have implemented e-commerce tracking. Out of the box, Google Analytics does not track that unless you send it or your website is programmed to send that kind of data to GA4. So let's add the name to the step, viewed a product, and then here we have to enter a condition. So our condition is fairly simple. We want to include those visitors who triggered an event called view item, like that, and select it. Then add another step where we are looking for add to carts, or maybe add it to cart, and then the condition would be another event. You can actually browse this list of various dimensions. For example, in the events, I can click here and then select add to cart, and then final step could be event which is called purchase, and then maybe we will call this purchased. Then apply. And here we can see how many people viewed at least one product, then how many people added at least one product to a cart and then made a purchase. Of course, probably more practical example would be something more specific, but now I'm just describing the general concept of how this exploration works. If you want, you can also see how the funnel steps and their completion changes over time. Here you can switch from standard funnel to trended funnel, and then each line will represent a different funnel step. So this top line is the first step, then this is the second step, and this is the third step. You can also do some breakdown, for example, based on the device category, because maybe a larger drop-off happens on a mobile device. So first, let me switch back to the standard funnel. And then in the breakdown, I will click here and I can select device category. The reason why I can select this here is because I have included that dimension here. So if you don't see it, add it first right here and then include it right here. And here I see that the completion rate on desktop here and here is much larger than on mobile device. So maybe it would be worth investigating. Maybe there are some technical problems or some usability problems for the users of the mobile devices. Just like it was with the freeform exploration, there are some additional settings here. So feel free to spend some time and investigate and play around with this. Also, if you want to learn more about funnel explorations, I have a tutorial and I will post a link to it below the video. Then one final exploration that I wanted to cover is the path exploration. And here you can see how people navigate your website. So if you click start over and then at the starting point, select, let's say, page path and then the home page, homepage is displayed as the slash, then you can see what people do or where they go after the homepage. This not set most likely indicates some technical implementation issues, but if we ignore this for now and then look at the second largest page, this is where the visitors go from the homepage. And then if you click here, you will see where else do they go. So most people go back to the homepage, but then some of them go to a different page, which is a particular product. You can add up to 10 columns in this exploration, and this might give you some ideas. Maybe there are certain loops in user navigation, or maybe visitors face some errors because you can switch, for example, from page path to event name. And if you're tracking some errors, let's say checkout errors, maybe you will notice that some of them block visitors from making a purchase. Even though there are more exploration methods, I use these three the most often. Let's go back to our setup. Right now we have installed Google Tag and it tracks the things that Google Analytics can do out of the box. But that's pretty much it. We will have page view data, maybe some scroll data, several clicks such as file downloads or outbound clicks will be tracked, but that's pretty much it. You will benefit from analytics much more if you customize your setup. So let's say that we have a website and let's imagine that this is a menu of the website. So we want to track when someone clicks on any of these links. And then we will understand which menu items are more important. So maybe we should prioritize them in the menu bar, or maybe we should add more emphasis on them on our homepage or something like that. In Google Analytics, there are 4 types of events. Automatically tracked events, for example, user engagement or session start. Then there are enhanced measurement events, recommended events, and custom events. You are somewhat familiar with the first two. And now let's take a brief look at the other two. So if you have some event which is not covered by enhanced measurement or automatically tracked events, then you should take a look at the documentation of recommended events by GA4. Below this video, you will find a link to the documentation. And here is the list of events that GA recommends you to track. You don't have to, but if it makes sense, it would be a good idea. For example, if you are selling something on a website, then definitely implement the purchase event with this exact name. And then if you click on that particular event, you will learn more information about parameters that you should send together with that event. Some of these events are pure recommendation. They are not required. For example, if you track form submissions, you don't have to name it generate lead. It can be form submission or something like that. But when it comes to e-commerce events like add to cart or purchase, if you track these kind of events, make sure to name them exactly like this. Because if you have an event which is called order completed, your revenue metrics will not be populated properly. So these names are quite strict, while these ones, at least as far as I see, they are somewhat closer to the recommendation. Now, going back to our menu link click tracking, you will not find any event related to menu links. So we can consider that menu link click event is a custom event. Custom event means that you can send any event name that you want with any custom parameters that you want. Well, with almost any parameter, but don't think about that too much right now. The only tip that I would have here is that you should still kind of try to follow the naming convention of GA4 and name your events all lowercase with the underscores right here. I mean, instead of spaces. So let's go to Google Tag Manager and configure the link click tracking. To do that, you will need to create a trigger, because trigger is the condition when you want your tracking code to fire. And we want to fire when a menu link is clicked. So let's go to triggers, click new trigger configuration and select just links. For now, let's keep it on all link clicks, but soon we will make it more precise. Let's name this trigger all link clicks and then save. Now let's click preview to enable the preview mode, and I will add this URL and connect. Now I will click the first link, the second link, the third link. Then I can close these tabs. I don't need them. And in the preview mode, I will see a bunch of interactions that were spotted by Google Tag Manager. And here I see all those link clicks right here. If I click on any link click, go to data layer, I will see some information about that link, like what was the URL of that link, what was the text. but we don't have variables right here. Now, what this means is that if you want to use some data in Google Tag Manager, that data must be available in the shape of variables. By the way, if you have never worked with Google Tag Manager, then I have a tutorial about it. So if you want to get started, I will post a link to it below the video. Now, speaking of the variables, if you want to get the click-related variables, like click text, for example, you should go to Google Tag Manager, Variables, and then in the built-in variables section, click Configure to enable the click variables right here. Click them one by one. Now let's click the preview to refresh the preview mode. And then if I click any link once again, and then go to the Tag Assistant and click on the link click right here and go to variables, now I see the information about that particular click. This is the information of the first click. We have menu link 1. Then if I switch here, I see menu link 2, and so on. What you will notice is that in my case, all of these links have the same class menu link. That's how I could make my trigger more precise, because remember, currently my trigger would fire on all link clicks. The trigger is the condition when we are going to send an event to Google Analytics, because these events are Google Tag Manager events. On some of these Google Tag Manager events, we will send data to Google Analytics. We will fire our tracking code. So to make this more precise, instead of all link clicks, we will select some link clicks. And if you remember, we have click classes, menu link. All of these links have the same click classes, which is menu link. So I will copy this, and then in Google Tag Manager, I will set click classes contains or equals this. And then we will rename the trigger, let's say link click menu item, and then save. So this trigger now would fire a tag only when a visitor clicks that specific link. But we don't have any tag that will send the menu link click event to Google Analytics. So let's do that. Let's go to tags, and this is responsible for the general installation of Google Analytics. Now let's create a tag that will send a menu link click event to GA4. Click new. Then here we have two sections. What will this tag do? This is where we have to do the configuration. And then when will this tag fire? Let's start with the configuration. So click anywhere, then Google Analytics and GA4 event. Here we have to tell this tag to which property do we want to send the data, and we need to enter the measurement ID. We can find that by going to Analytics, then Admin, then Data Streams, click your website data stream, and copy measurement ID. Then go back to Google Tag Manager and paste it. Since we already have the Google tag with the same measurement ID, this verification tells us that everything is okay. Now the event name. There is no recommended event name for menu link click, so we can just come up with our own event name like this. Then together with this event, we also want to send additional information, because just the fact that we send this event name will not tell us in the report which link was clicked. Was it the first one, the second one, or maybe the third one? So if we want to distinguish in the report which menu links are more popular, we have to send some additional data in the shape of event parameters. So expand event parameters section, and then let's add 2 parameters. Now you might be wondering what should be the names of the parameters. Technically, you could go fully custom. For example, you can call this menu item name or menu item URL, but there are some recommended or built-in parameters that Google Analytics automatically recognizes. Below the video, you will find another link to a documentation of enhanced measurement events. And here you will see what kind of events are tracked automatically and what kind of parameters are tracked automatically. Now, if you scroll down, you will see that there are some parameters such as link URL or link text. So technically, we could send these parameters with our event. Let's do that. Here in Google Tag Manager, I will enter link text exactly like this, and you can see that this checkbox tells us this is a known parameter, and then link URL, another known parameter. The beauty of Google Tag Manager is that it can dynamically fetch the information about a particular element, and you can use that in your tags. So here, the click text is menu link 3, here it's menu link 2, here is menu link 1. So we can fetch these values and dynamically send them to Google Analytics. So for the link text, we can insert a variable. You can click this button and then select click text. Then here we can insert the click URL. So that's it for the tag configuration. Now we need to decide when do we want this tag to fire. And this can be done by clicking here and selecting link click trigger. Finally, let's name this tag. I usually name them like this, GA4 event, and then name of the event, and click save. Let's test if this is working. Click preview to refresh the preview mode. And once the preview mode has connected, I will go to the website and will click on the first link, second link, and the third link. Now in the preview mode, I have 3 link click events. I click the first one and the tag fired, the second one, the tag fired, and the third one. Ignore this unknown tag type. Right now there is a bug in the preview mode. If you closed these 2 tabs and then started the preview mode again after a couple of minutes, this would go away. Now, if I click on another link, which is not a menu link, for example, here, in the preview mode, you would still get the link click, but your tag would not fire, which is correct. If you remember what we did with the Google tag, now it's time to test in the debug view, which is in Google Analytics. So let's go to Google Analytics, admin, and then data display, debug view. And then you should see your events right here. As I've said, debug view sometimes is quite annoying. It might be too slow. Sometimes not all events will be displayed, but let's check at least this one. I click it and I see link text and link URL of the first link that I clicked. Eventually, more events would appear in the debug view, including other link clicks. If not, then you would need to wait for up to 48 hours and then they would appear in other reports. For example, you could build an exploration in the same way as we did with the site search report. One thing to keep in mind is that Google Analytics requires more time to process the data. So if you try to build a report for menu link clicks right now, your report would not work. At best, you would be able to do that the next day, but it would be even better to wait for at least 48 hours. If you are somewhat confused how to find that menu link click information and how to build a basic report to know which links are clicked the most, here is an example. I've opened a different demo property that I have with some sample data. And I remember that a while ago, I tested those menu link clicks. So first I will select a larger time period, which is 12 months. Then I apply. And here in the dimensions, I will include 2 of them, or actually 3 of them. The first one is link URL, and I select this one. Ignore this. I was just testing something. Then link text and select this one. And finally, event name and select this. And finally, confirm. Then metrics. Here I will add 2 metrics, event count and select it, and then total users and select it. Click confirm. Now let's double click on link URL, link text, event count, and total users. This report is not ready yet because it includes data of all events that were tracked in this property. We want to look only at menu link click. That's why here at the bottom in the filters, I will click here, event name, and I want to include only those events where event name exactly matches menu link click, and click apply. And here I see how many times was each menu link clicked and how many users did that. And just like it was with the Google tag, once you made sure that everything is working properly, you will need to submit your changes. Click submit. Then enter, let's say, GA4 menu link click tracking, and then publish. From this moment, your menu link click tracking is live, and you will be tracking how your website visitors interact with the menu bar. And that's the end of this Google Analytics tutorial. Remember, this is just the very first step in your learning journey, and there are many more things waiting for you ahead. If you are really serious about learning Google Analytics 4, if you want to learn what is important to track, if you want to properly plan your setup, if you want to implement it, and most importantly, you want to get the value out of your data, then take a look at my full Google Analytics 4 course. I will post a link to it below the video. If you found this video useful, hit the like button below the video. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.